Oh, lone wolf. There's a few of those. There's a few of those. Yeah.
いつもとは違うな。
こんな手だれ同士の決闘、そうそう拝めるもんじゃねえんだぜ。
Hey, his hair kind of looks pink here.
では、そなたはどちらが
This should
強
be
いと
interesting.
考える。
Really interesting.
俺アシェラッドかな。奴に銀1ポンド。
かけぬぞ。なぜそう思う？
なんとなく。
トルフィンはそなたに勝ったのであろう。アシュラットはそれ以上か。
てめえ欲しい。なめてんな。3人の中でこの俺様が一番弱えとか。どうしたトルフィン。来いよ。振りが強くなる前に終わらせて。
Yeah, he's not.
しょうがねえな。
Let me go entice you a bit further.
攻めやすくなったろ。
Oh. Oh, why'd you do that, Thorfin? Come on. He got his hands on you, man. Really, Thorfin? Really? Still?
なまだわかんねえのか。なんでこうなるのか。さっきの訂正、勝負になってねえや、こりゃ。
It's a lesson.
トルフィンのやつ、癖から何からアシェラッドに見抜かれてら。たく。
I mean, this isn't a shocker at all, is it? Yeah, he doesn't learn.
トルケルに勝って調子に乗ったが。
Oh, look at that shot.
いい加減うんざりするぜ。
やめよ、そこまでだ。トルフィン。おい、トルフィン。
It does look pink.
わかるか。決闘はもう終わったぞ。
Come on.
妖精、もう終わりだ。てめえ！気を失ったのだ。すでにとどめを刺されている。右腕が治ってからまたやり直せ。
As if that's gonna make any difference, right?
治っても同じですよ。
Yeah.
怪我のせいじゃねえ。そのバカはバカだから負ける。普段はちった考えて戦うようになってきちゃいるが。いっぺん頭に血が上ったら全部台無しだ。首筋を狙ってるのが目線で丸分かりなんだよ。
He gives him a chance to just grab him. Listen, Thorfin, listen.
ぶち切れてでけえ声出して。獲物振り回すのはバカの戦だ。まったくどいつもこいつも美しさのかけらもありゃしねえ。ビョルンの言う通りさ。俺は戦士ってのは大嫌いだ。ノルド戦士、バイキングは特にな。初めて殺した相手もノルド戦士だった。美しくない男だったぜ。
Look at this.
俺の親父だ。
Wow. Is that right?
小僧、高額のために教えてやろう。憎い相手の
Wow.
殺し方をな。
Ooh, backstory? Backstory?
俺は
It
奴隷
is
の
a
母親から
backstory.
生まれた。
Wow. No.
おふくろは病気で働くことができなかった。体はいつも灰やすすや馬のクソや白かったり黒かったりだな。ついたあだ名がアシェラッド。
I remember
灰まみれって意味だ。
I remember coming across something like that. Oh.
酒と女と殺しが好きな、
He looks like him.
どこにでもいるようなバイキングだ。
Stables.
おふくろは若い頃、親父のお気に入りの奴隷だったそうだが、病を得てからは犬と同じ扱いだった。生きることが辛いのは俺にとっちゃ当たり前のことだったが、どうやらおふくろは違ったようだ。
Wow. Oh.
おふくろはよく 先祖の英雄アルトリウスの話をした。同じ話を何度もした。500年前、蛮族の侵入からお袋の故郷を守った将軍の伝説だ。自分を病や奴隷身分から解き放ってくれる者の再来をな。あんまり繰り返すもんだからよ。俺も信じるようになった。平和と豊穣、不老不死が約束された理想郷だ。
Wow.
英雄はそこで今も戦の傷を癒しているらし
The
い。
wise Askeladd.
待ちに待って500年。
Hmm.
英雄は
Look
ま
at
だ
this.
現れない。もし本当にご先祖様がそんないいところに暮らしてるならよ、好き好んでこんな世界に帰ってくるわけやねえ。そして俺が11の時、ついにお袋の心が折れた。
Oh man. Oh man. Oh no. No, 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 no.
よりにもよってたまたま通りかかった親父のことを英雄アルトリウスと勘違いしたらしい。
No.
一瞬で悟った。今この時アルトリウスがお袋を助けに来ないのなら、そんなものは永遠に来ないのだと。わかるか若造ども。
Wow, look at this.
誰かがやらねばならん。英雄でも神でもね、誰かがな。
Wow. Whoa.
不思議なもんだ。初めて使ったのに剣は俺の手によく馴染んだ。俺の体に目の前のクソ野郎の血が流れている証拠だと思った。情けねえ話さ。涙が出るぜ。
That might impress him though. Ulf.
わしの子か。
そうです。
見込みがある。今日から館に進め。
まずは親父の目に留まること。
Hmm.
成功だ。
Wow.
館では行儀よくしていた
So
よ。武術や馬術の鍛錬を怠らなかった。腹違いの兄貴たちともうまくやってた。
until the chance came from the looks of it. Wow.
奴隷暮らしから救ってくれた恩を決して忘れない忠実な息子だった。じきに周りも身内もすっかり俺を親父の子として受け入れるようになった。
Oh, look at this transition. Ah, beautiful. You could just tell.
この作業に2年をかけたぜ。
To take his father's head. Wow.
狙いは2つ。親父の油断と
Wow.
遺産の相続権だ。お前らにも見せてやりたかったよ。親父のあのなぜって面。
Ch-
使ったのは兄貴の剣だ。親父と仲の悪い奴から選んだ
Ah,
んです。
wow. Even then.
他の兄貴たちは犯人と思い込んで、そいつをリンチにかけちまえんの。全く単純な奴らだぜ。バカで不潔で、てめえの欲望以外に何もねえクソどもさ。
They're like demons. Depicted like demons.
そん時は俺も生きちゃいられねえだろうがな。
Wow.
長くなったら要するにだ、トルフィン。10年以上かけて俺一人倒せないお前はボンクラだって話さ。
うるせえ。俺は何があってもてめえを殺す。
Oh, Thorfin. Come on.
絶対殺してやる。
たく言ってるそばからそれかよ。 犬めてえに餌に釣られて駆け回りやがって。おめえの働きにはマジで頭が下がるよ。
Look at
茶
this.
番みてえな決闘に付き合ってやるだけで あのトルケルにまでホイホイ挑んでいくんだもんな。
He knows how to get him to
便
tick.
利なガキだよ。お前はトールズにも感謝しねえとな。
That's gonna.
うるせえうるせえうるせえ黙れ。今は傷を癒せ。違うか。
Look at the prince.
よさぬか。なぜ私なのだ。
Ooh, Canute.
英雄の末裔はそなたであろう、アシュラット。才気もある。
Yeah.
己自身が王となり、世を変えようとは思わぬの
He's
か。
got the qualities. That's for damn sure.
ご冗談でしょう。話聞いてなかったんですか。あなたの方が王にふさわしい。俺やスベン王よりもね。顔見りゃわかります。俺はただのバイキングですよ。
Wow. Okay, Thorfin, come on. Come on. There you go. There you go. Okay. Oh. Wow. The loss of innocence. Wow. Right then, look at that. Look at that. Yet another contender for one of the best episodes of the series, right? I mean, easily top 5. That's got to be at least top 5 for me. But yeah, you know, this last stretch of the anime of this story has been just incredible. You know, I'm not entirely sure the year this anime came out in, but you know, surely this must have been anime of the year. I mean, the benchmark this anime is setting for me as someone who's still essentially quite new to anime, right? In the grand scheme of things, right? You know, if I was to compare anime and the stuff I've kind of consumed so far in my lifetime, you know, if I compare it to film and television, live action television, that is, you know, I'm still a toddler in that sense, right? Still so much to experience, and of course that's really quite exciting. But you know, to me, it feels like really early on I've already kind of experienced one of the best, essentially, right? The benchmark is set so high because of this anime, because of the characters of this anime. Of course, Askeladd. Come on, man, come on. I mean, you know, this is a character that has been firmly established as a phenomenal character, right? That's a given. And again, that goes beyond anime as well. Yet, here, this late in the game, third last episode of the season, there is another level to this character, right? This is just, wow. You know, the benchmark is being set really high here, folks. I know I have a lot of anime ahead of me, and that's also exciting because there's every chance that I might be able to experience other incredible characters that are in the same category as someone like Askeladd, right? But the benchmark has been set really high for everything else that's to come after this in terms of my anime experience, right? But again, that being said, I have quite a bit to experience and get through and get to. So that's exciting in itself, you know, that I might come across other characters that are just like Askeladd. Yeah, you know, it's an incredible episode, and you know, that final moment, the final sequence, the final scene, wow. I mean, yeah, you know, Thorfin, he's certainly having an important moment there. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope that is the beginning of a change, a shift deep within Thorfin, right? That he is starting to kind of question his decisions, and you see through that montage that's kind of going taking us back through the years, essentially the last 10 or so years, and him really starting to think about the path he's been on, his actions, right? And the meaning behind it all, right? And the futility of it all, right? Spending all that time and essentially still being at square one. And of course, Askeladd's reality check here is much needed, much needed. It might be harsh on Thorfin, but this lesson was needed. Though you see through that incredible voice acting, and oh my goodness, wow, that he's still kind of holding it back, right? He's so frustrated, and you feel that in the voice acting. You feel the rage, the anguish, and him being so frustrated that he still is at square one all this time later, right? Because of the choices he made to follow Askeladd all that time ago for one specific reason and one specific reason only. And that scream, that cry at the end there, the voice acting, it really reminded me of Connie recently in Shingeki Season 4 Part 2. Spoilers ahead, right? So in 3, 2, 1, Connie having to kill Samuel and Daz and letting out that scream, that cry, right? It really reminded me of that, right? The pain, the anguish. I really hope this is the beginning of a turning point, right? It is essentially the third last episode of the series, of the season. 2 episodes to go, right? So I feel like this is a really important part of the season. I think this is the beginning of a turning point. I certainly hope so, because he has no choice but to change and accept it. He just has no other choice. He has to accept it. He has to change. Otherwise, he's essentially throwing his father's sacrifice into the gutter. I mean, there's still certainly a tough road ahead for Thorfin. Really tough road ahead for Thorfin. One that he has to face on his own. I certainly think he needs to be on his own. He needs to just leave all these people behind. He needs some time to himself for some self-reflection, as kind of beautifully shown in that reflection of his, right, in the blade, his father's blade. He needs some introspection, some soul searching, right? He needs to spend a lot of time with himself, right? Kind of formulating his life from this point on, kind of his trajectory from this point on, the meaning of his life from this point on, the reason for living from this point on, right? Again, assuming that this could be the beginning points of a shift, right? In Thorfin. But you could tell he's not quite there just yet, right? He is still kind of holding back, but he has to realize that this is not the right path to honor his father, his late father, and to honor his sacrifice, right? There's so many things that must hurt Thorfin at this moment in time. So many things that sting Thorfin at this moment in time. And there's this haunting moment as he finally realizes, oh, okay, hold up. He's been manipulated all this time, right? Psychologically manipulated through a master manipulator. Though, yes, that element's been there. It's always been there, Askeladd kind of using Thorfin. But you could tell, right? If you couldn't tell before, you could tell now for sure that he cares, right? And you see that he's actually even disappointed. I think he's actually even disappointed in Thorfin. That, even after all this time, even after this moment, right? Even if you forget all those years of him not getting it, even after this lesson, he's kind of, giving out or dishing out, and this, backstory that is kind of introduced at just the perfect moment, just the right moment. And the backstory itself was just phenomenal, I think. And I loved the presentation of it, right? Cutting back and forth. And of course, this old head, Askeladd, the wise Askeladd, kind of sitting there, right? On his sword. Yes, for the most part, it is kind of directed at Thorfin, right? To help him understand. But I think, you could tell it's clear that he is also, he's also putting this out there for Prince Canute as well. And Prince Canute is intelligent enough to take his lessons from it, for sure. I mean, he's been taking his lessons from Askeladd for some time now. Like I mentioned, he's intelligent enough to know the type of individual he has by his side. And I think by now he certainly understands how important some of the things Askeladd's done, even though they are a little bit harsh, they might sting. If you go back to Lord Ragnar's death, Prince Canute understands that this man has played a crucial part in his growth and his trajectory from this point on. I thought the presentation of that was just fantastic. And yeah, as you know by now, I love a good backstory. I really do. And this was a top-notch backstory. You really kind of see that pragmatic nature really early on in his life, right? He had to mature at a really early stage in his life, right? So in that sense, perhaps their upbringings are the opposite, right? Thorfin and Askeladd, right? Askeladd had to mature really quick, and he does mature really quick, right? And again, that pragmatic nature and attitude that I've noticed since his first appearance in this timeline, essentially, you see that it goes really far back. He had to be that type of individual, right, to survive and to help his mother survive, because he had to take care of his mother. And of course, that part isn't really comparable to Thorfinn's upbringing, right? It is kind of the opposite, but there are other parallels, through Askeladd and Thorfinn. And, in fact, you could tell that Askeladd does see a bit of himself in Thorfinn. And, I brought up this idea, this notion that Askeladd might be disappointed in Thorfinn. Yeah, you could see that he had hoped that, given that this is Thor's son, sooner or later, he might have shaped up. He might have kind of displayed and showcased some of those similarities to his great father, right? But none of that came to be. He's still kind of stuck in that loop, right? He's stuck in that endless loop. Thorfinn, that is. And you see that Askeladd is disappointed at this time, and you see he's had enough of it at this point. He's entertained this for a long time, for years, over a decade at this point. But, let's not forget, it was beneficial to Askeladd as well, right? He admits as much. He knows. The one thing I really appreciate about this character is that he knows his place, right? He knows who he is. And that's one of the most interesting things about this character and this backstory, right? Him becoming the type of person, the one thing he kind of hates most or despises most, right? A Viking, a warrior, a Norse warrior, essentially. By killing his father and taking revenge on his father, it kind of set into motion his own cycle, right? The self-loathing, self-hatred, because he essentially had to conform to that ugliness that he hates and despises so much. He then kind of goes on to spend years, decades, being a part of that ugliness. I kind of love that he brought up this idea of beauty, right? That these people are lacking beauty. Prince Canute thinks this is an incredible man, a special individual for sure, right? Prince Canute sees this, and he even posed the question: how come you don't, kind of be that figure, right? How come you don't want to be king? You see Askeladd, it's pretty simple for him. There's no hesitation there. He does not think he's fit enough to be that figure for his people, to be that hero figure for his people. Because at the end of the day, I'm just a Viking. Because he knows that's always a part of him. It's always been a part of him. He couldn't escape it even if he wanted to. And the fact that he looks like a carbon copy of his own father, right? Over the years, that must have played a part in that self-hatred and self-loathing. He called his first kill, his father, an ugly person, right? And of course, it's beyond the physical attribute, right? An ugly person, because his father represented all those things he despised. That brutish nature. And, you see his idea of these people, right? The depiction of Vikings as these demons. But, that's not just Askeladd's depiction of them and, feeling towards those people. I'm sure a lot of people have that same idea of these people, the Vikings, the Norse warriors, right? That possess no beauty in their approach. But, going back to Askeladd's backstory and him swiftly kind of getting in a position and, kind of going up the ladder and landing himself in a position to even, kind of get into the sleeping quarters of his father, right? That it was a normal thing for him, essentially, to get to that point, undetected, right? That he was able to, even be around that area. It was a masterstroke by young Askeladd, even back then. So, yeah, in that sense, I think it is a little bit unfair to compare young Askeladd to young Thorfinn, right? It is the opposite, right, in terms of upbringing and the necessity to take a certain approach, right? It's rough out there, right? It's rough out there, and someone like Askeladd learned that really early on and had that pragmatic approach. But, he played the game, he played it right. I mean, he even strategically kind of places the blame on a half brother, right? Someone who was known to have a bit of a spiky relationship with their father, Ulf, the late Ulf. And, from that point on, it appears that he initiated some sort of infighting, right? Civil war. But, that being said, it's clear that he kind of ended up on the right side of it, didn't he? You go back to that incredible cold open, Lydia on his back on the shore, and you see there's a lot of longboats to get him there, right? That's not an individual that is on the run or anything, right? He had a lot of support there to get him there and to get his mother there to kind of fulfill her dying wishes to die in her homeland. The late Lydia, wow, man. There, haven't even mentioned the technical side of the episode yet, right? The incredible score, wow. The visual side of things, the animation, the backgrounds, but some of these visuals, some of the imagery here of Askeladd, young Askeladd and his mother, especially them on that hill, overlooking the ocean essentially, or that peak or the cliff. Wow. I mean, there's that one frame in there that's certainly going to be my thumbnail. It's just a stunning frame. Everything about this episode was just brilliant. It was, it's a really specific animation for Askeladd, right? You see a lot of times as it cuts back to him sitting on that broken wall, essentially, as he's telling them about his story, his backstory for us, the audience as well. You see a lot of times his face is kind of in the shadow and everything else is lit up. And of course, I mentioned Prince Canute also getting something out of this, and I certainly believe he is getting a lot out of this, and he is going to continue to get a lot out of Askeladd, kind of being this important figure in his life, no matter how long it ends up being or how short it ends up being. But, that story about Arturios and this hero figure kind of coming back, the second coming, right? The restoration, that must have resonated with Prince Canute, or if not resonated, it must have reminded him of something he also kind of used to believe in, right? The second coming of Christ. Listen, it became really clear really early on in the series that Askeladd is going to become a type of father figure for Thorfinn, and in that sense, perhaps a bit of a father figure for someone like Canute as well, right? Yes, it's complicated for sure. It's a little bit twisted, it's a little bit complicated, but he is a type of father figure for Thorfinn. I remember mentioning this a long time ago in the first few episodes, right? Around the time Thor ends up dying and then Thorfinn ends up staying, right? And following Askeladd and his men. I knew even then that this man is going to play a role in this child's life. A crucial role, perhaps. And, even if Thorfinn doesn't want to admit it, right, deep down he knows that, yeah, there is this complicated relationship there, right? That this man, Askeladd, the man who killed his father, actually ended up becoming a bit of a father figure to him as well, right? It's a really complicated one, but I think Thorfinn knows this. Deep inside, he feels this. And, again, it kind of goes back to that final scene, right? Him kind of really, really, after a long time, allowing himself to think about these last few years, the last decade or so, right? And his inability to actually kill this man, right? You could even argue there's a part of him that maybe doesn't want to kill him. And he must kind of think of that moment in his head over and over, that chance he had. And again, a parallel there in this episode as well. You see Askeladd takes that chance. He takes that chance. He gets to his father's living quarters or sleeping quarters, and he takes him out, right? No hesitation. He kills him in his sleep. And he makes sure to kill the slave or his companion at that moment in time as well. Of course, he had to, right? So it doesn't get out. But, Thorfin had that moment as well. And, even back then, that scene stood out to me, right? Because Askeladd wasn't asleep, right? So he was expecting this. He was expecting something like that. And now, having seen this backstory, wow, right? He anticipated that something like that could happen to him as well. But you see that he was almost kind of interested in seeing how this plays out, right? How this kid handles it, right? Of course, Thorfinn couldn't do it, right? Ultimately, perhaps because he thought it was dishonorable to go kill him like that, right? But Askeladd didn't have any of those notions, right? He didn't have any pre-existing ideologies or anything holding him back at that moment in time, right? But this notion of wanting to duel him, and he wants it to be honorable, right? Askeladd is kind of throwing that back in his face, right? Telling him, listen, if you really wanted me dead, you would have killed me by now, or you would have killed me back then. Right? You did have the chance to kill me, but you didn't do it back then, right? If you truly want to kill someone you hate, let me tell you how it's done. And then, of course, the backstory kicks in. So, in terms of Thorfinn's storyline, right? Once he does kind of accept that he's been on the wrong path this whole time, and he does begin to take the steps towards a totally different type of life, right? A life that might honor his late great father. I'm so sure in that phase of his life, he is going to look back at this, right? Because, I do believe, regardless of how it happens, I do believe he is going to leave all of these people behind at some point, right? I've got 2 episodes left, so it feels like I might get to see that really soon as well. Like I said a few episodes ago, I don't think that this storyline is going to continue into season 2, right? I think I'm about to get the conclusion of the storyline in 2 episodes' time. So that's exciting, and also it's a little bit sad. Even though I want so much more of Askeladd, I have a distinct feeling that I'm not going to get that much more of Askeladd, right? And, I spoke of these potential death flags for Askeladd from some time ago, and they kind of continue, and they kind of continued in this episode as well, getting his backstory now, 2 episodes left to go as well. So, yeah, back to the original point of, Thorfinn leaving these people at some point, and that point perhaps being really soon as well. I feel like if I was to kind of do a time skip right now, Thorfinn kind of on a journey, right? On a different path, I'm so sure that he is going to understand, and he is going to realize and admit that this individual, Askeladd, he was important to him as well. He was important to him, for sure. I'm so sure of that. He is going to realize that, and, a part of him probably realizes that right now, but, that's the part right now that he hates, most likely. He hates that he might have that thought. Askeladd does care about him, right? And that's the reason he's frustrated and disappointed here. If he didn't care about Thorfinn, if he didn't care about his trajectory, he wouldn't bring up any of this at this point in time, right? He just wouldn't. And you see the disappointment, right? Again, the facial animation, you see the disappointment, and, the line of dialogue, give me a break. This is after he tells him this story, this, his own story, something to learn from, essentially. Thorfinn is still there, right? It's like in one ear, out the other ear. And you see Askeladd is just annoyed and frustrated, disappointed. But again, there's a whole angle of just being done with it all, right? He spent years and years kind of entertaining this, he called it a farce, essentially, these duels. And they are a bit of a farce. I don't think anyone really expected Thorfinn to do anything here, right? As I mentioned in the last few episodes, any potential duel is about to end in a beatdown for Thorfinn and a lesson, and I certainly saw that play out. And you can see that it's quite a deliberate narrative choice to kind of shift the focus to characters such as Canute, Askeladd, these really compelling characters, because it really magnifies everything, doesn't it? On one end you have these really compelling and interesting story arcs and characters, and the things they believe in, and the motives behind it all. It really magnifies the hollow nature of Thorfinn's pursuits, right? The tunnel vision, the thirst, or the obsession, that he has or has had for a long time, almost as if, he's more obsessed with hating Askeladd than actually wanting to kill Askeladd, right? it really magnifies it, doesn't it? And for that reason, you know, Thorfin's character progression and development, wow. You know, I'm rubbing my hands. For that reason, I keep mentioning I'm so excited for season 2, right? Because, you know, surely and hopefully that is going to be the main focus of the next season, right? Thorfin. It simply has to be, I think. You know, I don't think you could do another season of Thorfin being stuck in the same spot. So that is wow. You know, as of this point, season 2 for this anime is so high on my list. So high on my list of most anticipated. Listen, you know, it's essentially at the same level, maybe even more exciting to me right now than Shingeki season 4 part 3 or the final part, right? Yes, incredibly excited for that, but a potential season 2 for this, whew, you know, yeah, the potential there, it has me so excited. And listen, you know, I feel for Thorfin. Of course I feel for Thorfin. You know, I don't want to make it sound like I'm picking on Thorfin nonstop or anything. You know, there's also that guilt aspect to Thorfin, right? All that time ago, he must be thinking that all that time ago, if he didn't sneak on to that longboat, right, then things might have played out a bit differently for his father. You know, him being there in that situation, him being used as a hostage in that situation, him being there in general kind of changed everything, perhaps, in his mind for Thor's, his father, and the approach he had to take, right? So there's that guilt as well, right? His actions kind of led to his own father's death. It's a lot of suppressed emotion for Thorfin, right? There's a lot of things he'd rather not face, that's for sure. But he is going to have to face these things. You see the beginning of it at the end of this episode as well. And of course, it kind of brings up that dichotomy again, right? Him swearing to Ulf, him swearing to Lydia or Arturios, right? And the different situations he uses those names in, right? I mean, it's pretty clear at this point. And if you go through it, you could see, you know, at the times he uses Ulf, in the name of my father Olaf, or in the name of Lydia or Arturios, you could see the situations. It's really distinct, isn't it? That was clear all that time ago, right? If you go all the way back to that faithful meeting, right? Him running into Thor's, this really unique and different, special individual, right? That he was more than happy to follow, though it just wasn't meant to be, right? And of course, he had to play it off as a joke. You know, he used both Ulf and Arturios even back then, right? That it means something really different to him, right? And you see, once he does say, you know, in the name of Arturios, he keeps those promises. He means that, right? Or, you know, in the name of Lydia. You know, I mentioned the incredible score earlier. You know, I noticed one of those tracks really sounded similar to Gustavo's music, right? Really similar to Babel, The Last of Us. Not a god, not a hero, but someone has to do it. And you see that, you know, really recently, Prince Canute actually goes through this phase, doesn't he? Right? So again, you know, a lot of similarities to Askeladd and Canute as well, right? They both kind of took initiative, took matters into their own hands. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments. Give me your thoughts. If you're interested in full length or early access, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description and the pinned comment. There's only 2 episodes left, folks. There's only 2 episodes left. So, you know, it's bittersweet. It's certainly bittersweet. But yeah, you know, thank you for joining me for this one. And I hope to see you again soon for these last 2 episodes that are coming up. And then, of course, season 2 as well. Right, and I'll certainly do those as they're airing, for sure. But yeah, you know, thank you for joining me and thank you for your time, and I hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.